adventure, sports, outdoors. With host Harry Canterbury.
There I was, back in the wild again, and I felt right at home where I belong. I had that feeling coming over me again, just like it happened so many times before. Yeah.
Hi, Harry Canterbury with another edition of Adventure Sports Outdoors. Join us today as we go back in time and talk to a fellow by the name of Berwin Merriman from Fillmore, Illinois, who was in the United States Army during World War II in the Philippines. I think you'll find this show very interesting.
Adventure Sports Outdoors, brought to you in part by Corsaw Lumber, manufacturers of quality hardwood products, buyers of standing timber in Smithfield, Central Pool Supply, everything from pools to pool tables and much more in Peoria on West Pioneer Parkway. Mike O'Brien, Remax Commercial, Traders Unlimited Commercial. Kelleher's Irish Pub and Eatery, located on Peoria's riverfront, open 11 a.m. daily. And by JL Logging Keenan Edwards, buyers of timber and cut logs, specializing in walnut and white oak veneer. Our thanks to all of these sponsors.
I'd like to thank Brent and Kathy Manning for arranging this shoot down in Fillmore, Illinois. Kathy is the daughter of Berwin and is very proud of her father, and so am I. And so are all of the other Americans in this country. What a great guy, and I think you'll enjoy the program.
Hi, I'm Brent Manning, Pawnee, Illinois. I am very proud to be the son-in-law of Mr. Merriman. I've known him for now better than 35 years, and he is, in my opinion, a war hero, as all of the guys in World War II were war heroes. I think Tom Brokaw said it best when he said they were the greatest generation, and there's no question about that.
I am Kathy, the middle daughter of Dad's family, and we've just been so blessed to have Mom and Dad as parents. They have instilled wonderful family and morals and values into us, and it has moved on down to our kids and our grandkids, and we're very blessed to have them as our role models, and each one of us feel that way. There were 16 million soldiers in World War II, and they all made a huge sacrifice. We're just lucky and blessed that Dad was our hero and is here still with us and has shared some of these stories so we can learn more about him.
Tell us about where you were born and what was your early life like?
Well, I was born out north of Fillmore in the country. My dad was a farmer all of his life, and I've been a farmer all my life outside of when I was in the service.
Did you join or were you drafted?
I was drafted. A farmer neighbor, we lived out north down here, we had a farmer neighbor that wanted to get me an excuse, an agricultural excuse, because they was getting that around here, farm boys was, they didn't have to go to service. And I says, no, I'll take my chances. And that's what I did. Yeah, I went to Litchfield and caught a train going to St. Louis, and from there then they went down to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and that's where I took my basic training. And in fact, we left for overseas from there. And from there, we got on an old Dutch boat. It had been a freighter boat and converted to a troop ship, which was, you could get by with. And we went from San Francisco clear down, way down south into New Guinea to missed the Japanese that was patrolling the Pacific Ocean out there. And we had one false alarm, but we didn't know it at the time. Their computer or something said there was a Japanese boat close, but there turned up there wasn't. And but I think it took us some 20-some days to go from San Diego out there to New Guinea. And we landed in New Guinea, and it was, I think, I'm going to say 3 weeks, maybe more than that, before our tanks ever came to us. And we was doing, helping some of the privates and stuff was working, unloading ships and stuff. But as soon as we got our tanks, why, we went right to the war. And when MacArthur walked ashore, we landed at dark the night before, and the infantry was there, and they was pinned down. Their feet was almost in the ocean. That was all closer they got, and it was right at dark, and my tank was going right for a soldier that was laying there, and I hollered down through the turret because that intercom was all baloney, and hollered right down to him and told him to give a hard right and stop. And when he did, the side of the tank was about 3 foot from that man's shoulders. I mean, feet, because he was laying down, he was pinned down. And then they told us, and there was an airway there, airport, but it had grown up in grass about knee high or so, but that was our mission to go down and check that out, because there was supposed to be a bunch of Japanese down there. If there was, they left before we got there, because we didn't see any there. And then we went into, finally when we went into Manila there, that was the worst thing I saw outside of our injured soldiers was a civilian prisoner Walter camp there, and little kids just skinning bones, and they come out and cookie, 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 and come over our loudspeakers. Don't give them kids cookies, they're so malnourished it'll make them sick. And we had sea ration cans in our can, all little tins about that tall, about so big around, of all beans and meat and different things. And we give them little kids one a can apiece. We wouldn't give them two, we'd give them one. And they'd head back to the university there where they'd been pinned up for all that time. And then that night we was doing some street fighting, backing up the cavalry, which was pretty rough because I had to be out to see we didn't have our lights on, just our little bitty lights that didn't show much further from here to there. But I had to watch that he didn't run over infantry that was pinned down, and keep the stuff where they was burning the buildings was full of stuff flying around in the air. And I spent, like I said, the biggest part of my night outside guiding him and keeping the stuff that was blowing up in the air, because our tank had the air intake right behind the turret, and that was where the dang stuff would fall. And I'd get that for it sucked the flames down into my motor. And the next day, medium tanks come up where we were at, and this was in a different time though. But we was sitting on the outside of Manila to secure part of it outside, away from town and stuff. And we went down, and there was a Japanese man out here in the branch taking a bath, and I stopped and ordered him up, and he wanted me to shoot him. And I said no, and I called the captain. He come down in the Jeep and got him, and whether he ever had any information that do him any good or not, I don't know. But we hit a lot of heavy fire there and had to pull back. the next morning they sent the medium tanks down there, which is a lot bigger than ours. They had 75 millimeter gun out here and 50 caliber guns, where we just had 37s and 30s. And before they got down as far as we did, they'd run over a landmine buried in the road under the blacktop. You couldn't see it. And it blowed the blowed the tank off of, the track off of one side and disabled the turret. And I think it killed all of them, all 5 men on that thing, in that tank. And that was really the worst part I saw. But those little starving kids there, that was something to remember. But
What I'm going to ask you next is I want to ask you where you slept, what did you eat, what kind of accommodations were on. You slept in your tank, I would think, or once in a while you got in a tent, I would think.
Yes, most of the time. But if we was back where it was anyway half near safe, we would sleep on the ground, kind of under the back of the tank. We'd turn our tank, either turn it sideways to the enemy, and then we'd sleep on this side. But there was always a man on guard, so they wasn't slipping up on us, which we didn't have any problem with that. But
How many tanks were in your
5 in a platoon.
5? So it was actually called a platoon, and there was 5
tanks.
5 tanks.
Yes, and we was in the whole battalion. We was the only light tank company, because it just had 4 men and a 37 millimeter and a 30 caliber gun, where the medium tanks had a 75 millimeter big gun and 50 caliber machine guns on the side.
Were those gasoline or diesel?
Gasoline.
They're gasoline.
I don't know about the big ones, but ours was gasoline. The little tanks were gasoline. We had to go 1,900 miles to Lady, and there was a pretty good convoy of us, because there was medium tanks, three companies of medium tanks, which was bigger than my tank, which was a light tank. The medium tanks had 75 millimeter cannons with them, and we had a 37 millimeter. We was more of a recon than we were battle. And I know there, when we got into Manila, they got off there just a little ways, and the medium tanks, we went down this street, and the firing was so heavy we had to back up, because we didn't have any infantry or anything. So we turned around and come back, and they sent medium tanks next day. And the medium tanks, I don't know whether we weren't heavy enough or whether we just happened to miss it, but they'd buried 250-pound bombs in the blacktop. You couldn't tell it. It was all sealed over. But a medium tank run over one of them, and it blowed that tank off, that track off that side. And I can't remember now how many of the men it killed, or whether it killed any or not, but that tank was a pitiful sight to go by.
Russ, I've got here, it says the Luzon campaign brought out the largest number of casualties, and in your battalion you suffered 147 men killed.
Well, that was in the medium tanks and support group. We didn't have any in our company. We was in the light tanks, the little tanks.
It says your battalion was credited with killing over 5,128 of the enemy.
Probably was. It's hard to tell, because we just, if they give us resistance, we'd shoot them and move on. And by the time we got done where we was at, come back when everything was all cleaned up, because I don't know, the infantry or somebody was behind us cleaning up the mess that we'd left with the tanks. Before MacArthur worked ashore, makes a big deal. MacArthur worked ashore coming back into the Philippines, but we landed there the night before, and they had the infantry pinned down, and I was still partially in half knee deep water, being up on the land when they had the infantry pinned down. And 90% of the time we was always supporting the infantry, and they'd call us up, and they would walk along the side of the tank away from the enemy and tell us where they was at, Then we got into town, and during that night fighting, Japs was burning the buildings as they were leaving town ahead of us. And I spent the night, every once in a while there'd be something falling out of the air on fire to keep them sucking down into my tank. And we didn't go very far that night then, but by the next day the Japs had moved out, and it was quite, the worst part of it was seeing those little starving children in that civilian prisoner of war camp.
Hi, I'm Dave Barth with your Sportsman's Tip of the Week. We've talked about concealed carry in the past. It's as popular now as it ever has been. Here's some new examples of some concealed carry handguns. Here's a few examples of some new semi-automatics. If you're going to practice a little bit, a semi-automatic would be a good choice. They require a little more effort than a revolver. The first one here is a Ruger LC9S. It's a small, compact 9mm, made in the USA. The next one is a Sig Sauer. It's a P938 9mm. They also make them in a 380. They're expensive, but they're quality pistols. Right next to that, we have a pistol from Springfield Armory in Geneseo, Illinois. This is an XDS 9mm. They come with a hard case and 2 magazines. They also make them in a 40 caliber. Excellent choices, good reliable handguns. We also have holsters that are somewhat new on the market. And the first one here is, they call it a sticky holster. It's an inside the pant holster. And they call it a sticky holster because it's sticky. You know, it grips a gun, grips your pants and your shirt. If you'd like a belt holster, this is a Bulldog belt holster. It holds the pistol and an extra magazine. Next to that, we have a Bianchi pancake holster, which kind of breaks up the outline of the pistol, mounts on the outside of the belt. And then we have shoulder holsters and ankle holsters. And here to tell us a little more about the training involved with concealed carry is Chuck Barth with the Lost Creek Training Company.
Thanks for the introduction, Dave. There's a lot more involved in carrying concealed in the state of Illinois and other states than just picking the type of gun and understanding how the gun functions and operates. And that's why I think it's really important, you know, that you choose the right instructor. Along with the right equipment, you want a good quality set of instruction. Lost Creek Training, what I've focused on the last 20 years plus in law enforcement and over 25 years in special operations military, is to develop the correct mindset. Along with that is the right tactics. And we also get real in-depth into gun handling skills and a little bit of marksmanship with the time allotted. We do a 16-hour class for newcomers. Prior military does an 8-hour class, and anybody with prior law enforcement will also get a 8-hour dismissal. Choosing the right instructor and choosing the right company is paramount, along with, you know, making sure you have the right equipment. And the stuff you've got out here today is fantastic, good decisions, and that's what we want to stress upon and build upon is the good decision-making process.
I'm Dave Barth. That's been your Sportsman's Tip of the Week.
Russ, I want to ask you a question that you alluded to earlier in the interview, and I wasn't clear on it. But it's my understanding that you and your tanks liberated a university in the Philippines.
Yes.
And that's where the children that you refer to were starving Americans, isn't that right?
That's right.
So their mothers and fathers were doctors and university professors.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I didn't fully understand that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you bringing light to that.
Yeah. They were so glad, the little kids. It was just hard to take. Well, this is a samurai sword that I got, and the infantry had got it before us and took it back, and they couldn't keep it. And I asked the captain for it, and he says, well, sure, you deserve it. So he gave it to me, and I carried it in my tank. This prisoner of war camp we went into, they didn't have too many guards, and of course they left, but there was civilian prisoners there, and the grown-ups were just you might say, skin and bones, and the little children weren't much better, and they told us over our loudspeakers, do not give those children any of those candy bars or stuff that we got carried in our tanks all the time because it'd make them sick. But we had sea rice, is what they call, little cans of different things, and we'd give each kid to come up one of those cans when we could get to them. In the firefights there, we could let down our tanks and look through a little mirror and see, but most of the time, unless the enemy fire was bad, I kept my turret up so I could see so much more with my head out. And at one time, we was going down the street real slow, and our antenna for our radio was right behind me on the back of the turret, and a bullet had hit that, and that thing hit me on the back of the head, and so that was the closest, I guess. No, another time I was shooting my anti-aircraft gun. We was taking infantry across the big bridge across the river. The infantry, as many could walk on one side from the enemy shooting down this way. We'd take them across, turn around, go back. And I seen some down there, and I was up, my shoulder was up out of the tank, and I was shooting down there, and I don't know where the bullet come from, but it hit my machine gun and skinned my fingers. And I didn't go to the medics or anything, just doctored myself because we had first aid kits. That's one mistake I made, because if I'd have went, I'd have had 5 points, and I'd have probably got to come home a month or two earlier.
You come in the day before. That was all staged. You know, MacArthur, he was a big glory seeker, and he wanted to walk off with the landing craft.
We went in the night before, just at dark.
And secured the area.
Yeah. There was supposed to be a airplane plant there. I mean, where they had the airplanes, but there wasn't. We were supposed to secure that, but grass was knee high, so there was no airplanes around. So we just, when we landed on shore and got past the infantry that was pinned down, well, of course, when the tanks started coming, the enemy moved back, and we went down through the airstrip, and turned around and come back, and set up camp right there at the edge of the water. And the infantry told us, the cavalry says, you guys are not night watching anything. Said, you just go to sleep wherever you want to sleep. Says, we're taking care of the night watch. And so we did, got a little bit of sleep, but.
Russ, I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
And this is, I think, part of the story that we all want to hear. Obviously, you made it back safe. Can you tell us about your experience, where you got to the United States, how you got back to home, and who picked you up wherever that you came into? So can you give us a little bit of that insight? Once you got to San Francisco, how did you get back to Litchfield or to Central Illinois?
By train.
By train.
Yeah, and got back to Litchfield, and of course my folks was over there ready to meet me, and it'd been a long time. It'd been probably close to 2 years since they'd seen me when I was home before I went overseas to the war. And of course I wrote once in a while when I had time, but I was.
Was it an emotional homecoming?
Yeah. Everybody was so happy. I mean, my folks were so glad to see me because they kind of knew halfway what I'd been through, because they knew where I was at, what I was in, and they followed that on the news, so they knew pretty well what I'd been doing.
Once you got home, and your mother and father learned about some of these stories and the peril that you were in, did they become tearful? Did they, or did you?
I didn't tell them. I didn't tell them. There was no use. I was home.
Right.
And there was no use for them to go back and worry about, go back through it again.
Right.
And they just had the two boys. Of course, my brother, he was in Europe in the topographic outfit making maps. He wasn't into any combat or anything, you know, but he was serving the country.
You bet.
And it was quite an experience. Yeah, most of the war I was a staff sergeant, platoon sergeant. I mean, there's a lieutenant, and then the platoon sergeant, staff sergeant, and the tank drivers and stuff was corporals and just first sergeant. I mean sergeants. They weren't anything extra, and but it was I was honored to be a first sergeant because sending a lot of people home and stuff, and had a lot of paperwork to do. But it was good. It was a good experience. This is my top part of my uniform: my shirt and tie, and my coat, and these here tells of the. I can't remember where they're at, but each one stands for a place where we are at overseas fighting. And then this down here is 3 years in the service. And I was a staff sergeant most of the time, but when the war was over, why, they made me first sergeant. And they, which was quite a deal, sending guys home.
Does that uniform still fit?
I don't know. Does it, Mother?
Well, we're not going to undo it. He looks pretty thin in those pictures back there. I don't think it would.
My sons, all my friends in the service signed this, and I got this off of a dead Japanese soldier.
I'm Helen, wife of this wonderful man, soldier, my soldier here. We've been married 68 years. We had 6 children, 10 grandchildren, and 17 grandchildren. And it's been a wonderful life. He's a perfect man. And we love America that he fought for, and it's the reason we have our country today is for these soldiers.
Adventure Sports Outdoors, brought to you in part by Corsaw Lumber, manufacturers of quality hardwood products, buyers of standing timber in Smithfield. Central Pool Supply, everything from pools to pool tables and much more in Peoria on West Pioneer Parkway.
Mike O'Brien, Remax Commercial, Traders Unlimited Commercial. Kelleher's Irish Pub and Eatery, located on Peoria's riverfront, open 11 a.m. daily. And by JL Logging Keenan Edwards, buyers of timber and cut logs, specializing in walnut and white oak veneer. Our thanks to all of these sponsors.
That greatest generation really earned that reputation. What a bunch of heroes. I love those guys, and there's not many left. There's only about 1,600,000. There was 16.5 million men and women that went to war during World War II. We're coming back from Florida. We're going to do some turkey hunting, mushroom hunting, some crappie fishing, and a whole bunch more. So we'll see you next month.